Dragon Age Veilgod is all about restrictions. The romances, the type of magic you can use, the character you can create. You can make a character that a modern BioWare dev considers attractive, but you cannot make a masculine man or a feminine woman. You can't make a big booty, slender waist, and big tits. You can't make a rugged, strong Canary. You can only make Granddad Bod, whose skull is bigger than his torso. You take an established IP, then a bunch of these modern audience comics, shows, or games start being made, only for half the cast to look like doppelgangers of their creators. We now know why. That is the modern audience. It is the people who write for the modern audience, who should be doing fanfics about their fetishes, starring vapid, ugly characters who are all super strong, need no mentor, learn no lessons from their errors that don't happen, and everyone claps whenever they say the most mundane things. Why is it every single remake and remaster is being wildly censored, every time in the same way? These games were made in the era of the satanic panic, the violence against video game mom, the various other puritanical attempts to come after games. Yet somehow 1980 to 2010 was less censorious than today. It'd be harder to find a remaster that wasn't censored by the woke mob. Strange that it is always no big deal, yet they always have to censor everything. Also interesting that people who are so anti-capitalism, they're constantly embedded deep in corporate structure and taking action directly against the general peasantry. We have wheelchairs in D&D because they fetishize disability, and you know none of them have ever used or even had to push a wheelchair across morning grass, or they know there's no getting through the roots of a wild forest, over the dunes of a desert, or up a spiral staircase in an ancient castle. We have people whose gospel is diversity, yet every protagonist has the same haircut, attitude, and background. And when you look at gaming studio staff photos, you can see how DEI has replaced all of the original devs, with Type B directly matched with the downfall of their popular IP. Games today are fanfics. They are a mix of diary, shipping, and how they lash out against whatever their college professor told them is to blame for every problem in their lives. These are the types of writers and artists whose limit to creativity is taking someone else's character, recoloring them, putting them in a bunch of weird situations, having a dozen people look at what they made on Tumblr, and then saying, "My OC, do not steal." Except now they are running IPs capable of making hundreds of millions of dollars, instead of their fantasies being put in front of tens of similarly minded people on fringe sites meant for pushing their kinks and ideologies on millions of people who have no interest. So they form these cults inside studios, use DEI to remove, silence, and threaten anyone who might dare to point out that their writing is not going to appeal to anyone. QA is being ignored, and their tiny echo chamber has them mentally isolated, believing that $400 million project is going to become the next Star Wars. Everyone else in the world knows Concord, Unknown 9, and the other 50 woke disasters this year alone were dead on arrival from the first trailer, and yet we are seeing losses up to 99% of the budget. You might say, well, Concord is a unique IP, meant for a modern audience, one that decided not to buy it. Sometimes there are just things not meant for you. This is the case for Harlequin romances, Twilight, 50 Shades of Grey, and they do plenty well and nobody really complains about them. Yet, you don't have a bunch of guys getting into those IPs and industries and trying to force every single known IP for women to become stories meant for guys. You have a franchise with a mostly male audience, with character personality and backstories aimed at male gamers, lore and world building, action and gameplay, tough male characters, and sexy female characters. Just like novels meant for women have vapid, shirtless, muscular dudes, or freakish monsters being banged by plain, blank slate teen girls or wine mobs that they can imagine themselves as. And it is fine for there to be a Harlequin and monster banging section in bookstores where women can objectify men all they want, yet the mirror of that, for some reason, is not allowed. Anyone can try and write a Harlequin romance meant for guys, but it will do poorly, because the intended audience, guys, won't care, and the built-in audience, women, won't like the changes. You have every right to make it, and everyone else has the right to criticize and not to buy it. And that's what happened in gaming. They made something for themselves over and over, and it failed. So they used ideological bullying to install themselves in positions of power in the industry, where they oust and intimidate passionate devs who actually love making video games, and they took over IPs with large male audiences, turning popular IPs into fan fiction. With decades-old franchises, they coast off the brand for a while, yet all of them start to fail over time, because they lose the original fanbase, yet cannot attract the so-called new, modern audience. This would be like having someone clear a marsh, prepare the land, build infrastructure, and toil for years to make a successful ranch. then have the government confiscate the land and give it to a committee of vegans who have never left the city, declare all ranchers to be evil, plant a bunch of rice on the ground, then throw a tantrum when the rice fails to grow, while calling all ranchers and meat eaters evil scum and the reason for your failure. If the industry is more diverse now, why is every AAA game released with the same stories, characters, and propaganda? Why are there fewer choices in choice-based games? Why are mod sites like Nexus now constantly banning legal mods? Why are activists praising games that take away player agency? Why are character customization options becoming more and more limited? Why do Western AAA games constantly release with the same visuals and problems despite years of failure and poor reception? The answer is quite simple. These are games made for the people that make the games. A modern Western RPG, the only role player is the developer. The choices are gone, the options are curtailed specifically for whatever their belief system is. You lose the ability to make choices that are good or evil if the belief behind the people making the game is that nobody should be able to make a choice that they deem to be evil. There is indeed a modern audience. They might not buy the games, but they are making them.